Ice baths have been demonstrated to have a wide range of positive effects.
There we go.
For instance, it can boost the immune system, treat depression, enhance peripheral circulation, increase libido,
37.9
burn
degrees.
calories, and reduce stress. One study shows that cold exposure can be effective in treatment of chronic autoimmune inflammation with significant increases, like 2x or 3x, of norepinephrine. Norepinephrine interacts with immune cells such as T cells, B cells, and macrophages by binding to adrenergic receptors on these cells. It can influence inflammation by either promoting or suppressing certain immune responses, depending on the context. This immune modulation reduces the activity of the inflammation cells, or cytokines. Other benefits from ice bathing include a reduction of hypercholesterolemia by brown adipose tissue activation. It leads to decreases in several factors, including APO beta, APO alpha 1 ratio, plasma homocysteine levels, GPX1 activity, oxidative stress markers, plasma, ACTH, and cortisol, plasma alpha 1, antitrypsin, immunoglobulin, IgG, IgA, IgM, and salivary IgA, and insulin concentration. Conversely, it increases free testosterone, PTH, TSH, PON1, T lymphocytes, CD3, T helper cells, CD4, T suppressor cells, CD8, IL-6, leukocytes, monocytes, zinc concentration, plasma troponin, HSTNL, plasma norepinephrine, and insulin sensitivity. Other responses to cold water exposure include improvements in CVD risk factor markers, lowered cold shock response, changes in skin fold thickness, increasing in men and decreasing in women, improved CIVD response, shifts in fat metabolism, increased potential of non-shivering heat production, reduced thermoregulatory threshold for cold thermogenesis, habituation of thermal sensation, comfort, and habituation in the respiratory response. There was another paper demonstrated that cold exposure reduces inflammatory cytokines and ameliorates neuroinflammation in the mouse model of multiple sclerosis, called experimental autoimmune encephalomyelitis. This is the paper that convinced me to start using an ice bath. The key finding was that cold exposure led to a decrease in pathogenic T cell cytokine signatures in the central nervous system during EAE, or experimental autoimmune encephalomyelitis, in those mice, including reductions in GM-CSF, interleukin 17, and IFN gamma producing T cells. It showed reductions in inflammatory T cell cytokines. These were observed in the draining lymph nodes, and decreased the percentage and activation of MHC2 expression of inflammatory LYC6C monocytes in the blood and central nervous system during the experimental autoimmune encephalomyelitis. In the central nervous system, cold-exposed mice showed increased expression of the anti-inflammatory marker ARG1 in monocytes, including a shift towards anti-inflammatory phenotype. RNA sequencing of the spinal cord during experimental autoimmune encephalomyelitis showed that cold exposure prevented or reduced many of the inflammatory gene expression changes normally induced by experimental autoimmune encephalomyelitis. These immunomodulatory effects of cold exposure led to significant attenuation of the experimental autoimmune encephalomyelitis disease severity, delayed onset, and reduced central nervous system pathology. The authors concluded that cold exposure orchestrates an immunologic reprogramming that protects against central nervous system autoimmunity. Acknowledging that this is a study on mice, the results were compelling enough to convince me to spend $7,000 on a new cold plunge and start cold therapy immediately. Every day for the past year and a half now, I get into 39-degree water or colder for 4 minutes. Today it was 37.9 degrees. I just always make sure it's at least 39 degrees. The benefits that were reported seem to start at 60 degrees, and this is Fahrenheit. So as long as it's 60 degrees or below, you'll see some benefits, but obviously the colder, the better, the bigger the response that your body is going to have.